Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Welcome to the GSMC Football Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network. I am host one of two, Ethan, alongside two of two, Mr. Brice Lewis. Brice, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right, man. Just going through it day by day, man. Just trying to live life to the best of its abilities, I guess you could say. So, I'm doing pretty well. Can't complain. How about you? You doing well?
I'm trying. We're getting through.
Yeah, I felt that, man.
All I've done is just watch basketball and hope.
That's all. What else is there to do? At least basketball's been entertaining, right?
Yeah, it's done everything that we'd hoped it could do for us because everything else is slowly fleeting away from us day by day.
Yeah, and especially with, I guess, in some parts, at least right now, publicly, one part of the football spectrum up in the air. The basketball might be a saving grace right now since it's going till October.
Right. So we should just get into it then, huh? College football is on the verge of flopping, tapping out, going away for a year. It's getting bad. And I am, for one, not surprised, but still 100% fully disappointed in the rumors that are being coming across. However, with said rumors, players are trying to speak up to save the season. And I think it's too little, too late at this point, personally. But it all kind of boiled down between the last few days where we saw the MAC conference. They tapped out. They were the first FBS conference to roll out the not playing at all for this season. And then, of course, we know UConn was the first FBS school to do it before them, but they're independent. So it was kind of like, well, they get to choose what they want to do anyway, right? Mm-hmm. But it's getting bad now because with the MAC conference being the first domino to fall, everybody else kind of has to look around and say, well, how are we supposed to legitimately do this? All it takes is one. Like if the Pac-12 decides to say that they're not going to play, how are we supposed to get a national champion? Right? How do we know if the national championship is legitimate? What exactly does a season look like without one or two conferences? I feel like once one or two go, it's all got to come down.
Yeah, and, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I mean, obviously, players, like you said, have been speaking out, saying if we're going to play this season, we have a list of demands that we want to be reached before we play to protect ourselves and our fellow student athletes. And, we don't know if these conferences are going to abide or work with the players so they can have a season. But, I mean, there's some leagues that are just prepared maybe to shut it down. I mean, I read a report that the Big Ten is technically, they've discussed pulling the plug on the season and canceling their entire season, which would be the big domino because it's a Power 5 school. I mean, Power 5 conference that's decided to basically say we're good. And if they pull the plug, I mean, it's almost like now every other conference has to, in a way, because, obviously everybody's shifting to a only conference schedule, so it won't necessarily affect if non-conference because there's nobody playing non-conference, but just the fact that you're losing one of your big conferences is a big deal. And then other schools may follow suit. And, also, I remember reading an article last week from the Ringer about the system of college football. And it's really showing during the coronavirus pandemic. And if you think about college football especially, mm-hmm. you see this facade that they have. Everybody is governed by their own leagues, not by the NCAA, even though the NCAA is on the image and the picture.
Right.
And basically, with this virus, it's showing how every league operates differently, how every school is operating differently, how each division is operating differently. And the fact that we don't have that one person who could just say, this is what we're doing and this is what's best. The fact that everybody has their own individual decision. That's why you're seeing certain people take certain recommendations or safety measures. Some are saying, we're going to try to risk it. It's just, there's too much. The structure of the NCAA in general is not good because there really is no structure. And so when something like this happens, that's why you're seeing it kind of look like it's going to crumble in your eyes, because it's just like there's no structure. Like NFL, at least there's a commissioner, and if the commissioner was just like, and the league said, okay, this just isn't a good decision, they can just say, okay, once we make the decision, every team has to follow it, and that's that. But college, literally, if Michigan said they don't want to play, it doesn't necessarily stop anything. It's just Michigan won't play. But that should be a big deal because, I mean, Michigan's a big school. It's a big powerhouse. It's a blue chip college, especially for football. And that should probably mean the rest of the Big Ten should also do the same. And same thing with SEC. You know, if you know, a big or multiple schools in the conference say they're going to like opt out of the season, that should mean the entire conference, because it's just like you're too close to the season to be changing schedules and all this stuff just to accommodate. After a while, you just kind of have to let bygones be bygones and just let it be known, like, okay, it's just not going to work. So, you know, that's why when I read that article, it just really explained the whole detail how Division II and Division III have already canceled their fall sports, citing, you know, safety and everything, and how Division I's still up there. You've had players in Division I football came out and tweeted, how is it they can cancel but we can't cancel? I mean, listen, I understand that we are the top division and we make the most money, but we're people just like all those other people. If they're willing to cancel to protect their players, why can't y'all cancel to protect us? So it's just a big dilemma right now that I think the entire college sporting landscape is going through, especially since it's directed on football, since that's the big major sport coming up right now.
Well, we got to remember that Division II and Division III basically don't make any money, right? Their football doesn't draw enough money for it to be a concern to shut it down. And most schools live off of, you know, tuition and academics at certain levels, right? But then there are Division I Power 5 schools who most of them still don't basically make all their money from football. It's a large amount of money, but not everybody is, you know, Alabama. Not everybody is LSU. Not everybody is Ohio State or whoever who makes a large sum of their yearly revenue based off of football. So everybody's kind of trying to break even at some point. And sometimes that revolves around, you know, buy games and things like that. And that's already basically done for most people, if not all. Buying games this year are completely out of the question. So now you have to look at the larger landscape of where the league is at. Or should I say an NCAA, because we have 5 different leagues where basically all of them want 2 different things. Like some are like the Pac-12 and the Big 12, Big 10, I can't remember which one. Both of them align more directly with each other than others do. The SEC is kind of on its own. Like everybody else is kind of like on their own and waits to see what else everybody else does. But the Pac-12 and the Big 10 typically have the same sort of mentality when it comes to a lot of this kind of stuff. So it's going to be whatever those 2 decide to do, because if one does one thing, right, the other is probably going to follow suit. And 2 out of 5 Power 5 conferences backing out of the season, it's not good. It's not. There's no way you can justify playing a season where you basically can't even have a real playoff in a sense, right? Mm-hmm. You would get how would you even judge the playoff? Half the teams would be essentially gone. Everybody, you have to rearrange what your top 25 is for this year, and it just will feel illegitimate, right? You can't have bowl games. We don't even know if we were going to have bowl games this year, right? We're really certain that we were going to get a conference championship game. Mm-hmm. And we would only get 3 out of the 5, while basically everybody else in the country are not playing football. Like, it's not playing football. How are we supposed to do that? That's impossible. Which is why everybody's panicking, because if 2 out of the 5 cancel, all eyes are on you. What's your move? SEC, what's your move? ACC. The ACC tried to do a big brain move, trying to get out the news that they were going to at least have one non-conference game on their schedule, but they didn't say who it was going to be, knowing that the SEC was going to announce that they were going to have none. So the ACC got ahead of the game and was like, listen, don't blame us that we're not going to have the SEC-ACC rivalry game. It's all on them. We still had an open slot. We didn't say who was going to get it. And the SEC was in their feelings about that, clearly. They did not enjoy the fact that, the ACC decided to play 4D chess for the one time. But now everybody's about to get punished because you waited too long. The country sold. We didn't do the right thing. Literally if you look at where we were in April, right? And the small amounts of optimism that we had. One of the most influential quotes I remember from that was some athletic director basically was quoted saying that we're effed. There's not much we can do here, can we? And everyone's like, it's too far down the line to say that. You don't know. Overreaction. And here we are. We are screwed, Brice. We are done. And
you can tell they're trying to do damage control. They're trying to push the season back, rearrange. We'll give themselves more time, figure some more things out. It's crazy. You notice how they could just change everything. They could eliminate games. Because, obviously, most college schedules have been locked in for years in terms of opponents. It's just like the weekends and everything. Because usually colleges and ADs set their schedule. And now it's just on that fly. Okay, we're moving this team. Or square. Okay, we're going to push games back. We're going to do that. We're going to push that. We're going to move that. And I'm just like, it's crazy how y'all can just make these adjustments. But when the regular stuff come on, then I know this is kind of like a side thing, but you know how like certain people will be like, how like Alabama schedules cupcakes and they don't schedule like a big time opponent and like a home field. So obviously they could easily switch and change schedules up whenever they want. And I think that's why, again, they're eliminating the non-conference to help reduce the games starting earlier, obviously. So then it gives them more time to potentially see what happens. But I mean, at this rate, we pretty much know what we are in right now, and it's not going to change. I think everybody's at the point where what we're doing right now, what we're experiencing right now is going to be here for the rest of 2020. So there's not much that you can say, oh, it could change in like a month. Nothing's changing in a month. If anything, it can get worse or it can remain stagnant. That's what's going to happen. It's not going to get improved for the most part unless something drastically happens. So, it really does seem like for the most part that this season is just, it feels like just because I also feel like these are college kids, I just feel like we may be better off just going ahead and canceling the season. Like you said, it's like stuff happening. And also we have to remember a lot of players that are eligible to get, like I said, drafted highly in the draft. And if you're like a top first, second, or third, maybe even fourth round pick, depending on how you feel, you just feel like yourself, what's the point? You've had a lot of players opt out. And now Trevor Lawrence said he's going to stay and he's committed, but a lot of other players have opted out. And it's just like if your best players are opting out and everything's just looking uncertain, it's just what motivation do you have? You can't even have fans at the games, more than likely. So it's just like, what are you doing? You're putting college kids in empty stadiums or empty wherever, and maybe half the team or maybe a quarter of the team don't want to play because of COVID. It's just like, well, what are we doing here? Like, what is this really worth the risk to play this game? Especially since we aren't doing a bubble like the NBA or the NHL is doing or MLS. So it just, to me, I don't see it. I mean, I understand people feel like, oh, these are athletes in top shape and they're young and, oh, they have a lower chance. But still, just to me, I never get the whole point of why even put them in a situation, because people don't forget, just because you can't actually pass away doesn't mean you can't get any bad effects from COVID-19.
We've already been seeing a lot of lingering effects from certain people saying that they've been having heart issues or respiratory issues that have been long. I remember Rudy Gobert said months down the line he still had problem tasting stuff. And he was definitely somebody who ended up showing a lot of symptoms on the back end. But it's just getting pretty drastic. I know a lot of people are upset. A lot of college players are trying to rectify the situation. But unfortunately, this was a outcome that could have been predicted a bit easier due to just the lack of urgency. I think a lot of officials showed through the NCAA. We didn't start to get unified ruling on how they're going to handle COVID-19 testing for all Division I until maybe 3 weeks ago. I'm pretty sure they started doing practice before that, like unofficially, like voluntary workouts. Mm-hmm. It's not good. But we're going to take our first break here, and we're going to come back and talk about some NFL news topics and discussions here at the GSMC. We'll be right back.
Listen up, sports bettors. This is Brice and Ethan here to tell you about our favorite sports book, and that's BetUS. Football, basketball, and baseball are all back, and that means it's time to get down your bets. We only endorse one sports book, and that's BetUS.com. Why, you ask? BetUS is the pioneer in online betting with more than 25 years in the biz. You need a sports book with integrity and longevity, and you need to know that you're going to get paid.
That's right, Brice. You need a sports book that offers everything, including live betting, MMA, golf, horses, esports, entertainment of all kinds of crazy prop bets and future bets. So call today at 1-800-MY-BET-US. That's 1-800-MY-BET-US, and they'll walk you through on just how to get started. Nobody in the industry gives bigger bonuses than BetUS. Join now, mention GSMC, and you can get up to 150% in bonuses on your first deposit. Nobody can beat that. We bet at BetUS, and so should you. Join BetUS today. That's BetUS.com or call 1-800-MY-BET-US. Mention GSMC to get 150% in bonuses on your first deposit.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, we're back. GSMC Football Nation. Brice has a game for us to play here at the GSMC, and I'm excited for it. It sounds good. Sounds like it'll be a interesting thought experiment on football and how people move around, because unlike the NBA, a lot of people in the NFL don't typically move around depending on the position, right? Quarterbacks typically stay with the team that they drafted them by, and then after that, everything else is kind of fair game at this point.
Mm-hmm. So what we're going to do is, to explain it to everybody listening. So we're basically going to give each other a name and then of a player. And then we'll just say, like, do you think you see them past this year or for the rest of their career or however else, depending on how long. And we'll give our reasonings on why we do or we don't and go from there. So, it's not too complicated, simple, but I feel like also very interesting. So you ready, Ethan?
Yeah, man. Go ahead.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and ask you somebody first. So we're going to talk about Dak Prescott. And do you see him as a Dallas Cowboy after this current season? Or do you see him moving on?
I don't see why they would. It would really depend on what happens during the season. If we have one, all this is based on we'll play a season, we'll have a good amount of games, and there will be a champion, and thus there will be a rankings, like where did everybody fall? So if let's say Dallas stinks, right? And Dak Prescott is not playing up to par, even to the franchise tag level, I don't see why Jerry Jones would be hesitant to not re-sign him and let him walk, right? Because it already seems like he's kind of hesitant on paying him big money in the get-go. Well, at least the money that Dak wanted at the time frame that he wanted, right? Dak wanted to be on contract for, at first it was 3, then he moved to 4, but he didn't want a 5-year deal whatsoever. So I know that's what was in Dak's future foresight that he wanted to get done. That didn't happen for him. Of course, he signed the franchise deal, the franchise tag. I don't think if anybody plays bad on a franchise tag, that's not really good because it does nothing for you. It makes you look pretty bad. And we've also seen how things can go really, really bad really quickly when you are trying to say, oh, I'm going to bet on myself, or oh, I'm going to hold out, right? Or not play. And somebody replaces you and things look bad. Like Melvin Gordon, of course, it's easier to replace a running back these days than it is to replace a quarterback. Not to say it's ever been easy to replace a quarterback, but same ideology, right? Melvin Gordon, he wanted to hold out and he bet on himself. And he said that, you know what? You guys need me and I'm just not going to play and I'm going to wait until you guys offer me a better deal. Well, unfortunately, Austin Eckler went and torched up the league on his side of the conference. And it just made Melvin Gordon have to come back earlier than anticipated. And also Melvin Gordon did not play very well when he did come back. So thus he ended up having to take a lesser amount of money, lesser deal, and he ended up going to Denver. Now, Dak will never have to deal with that less amount of money ever as a quarterback. There will be somebody who will jump on him, but it really all depends on if he plays bad. I think if Dak plays the same way as he's played his whole career, there should be no reason why I don't believe Jerry Jones doesn't re-sign him. They'll figure something out. So I think he'll probably be a Dallas Cowboy until the bitter end, unless something drastic happens, like, the Cam Newton thing, because I don't think anybody thought Cam Newton wouldn't still be a Carolina Panther, but here we are. So,
I guess, yeah, that can happen sometimes. A lot of surprising things happen when it comes to people's futures. You think they never live. I mean, listen, nobody thought Tom Brady wouldn't be a Patriot. So, I mean, he's in Tampa now, so it happens. You have anybody for me? Anybody want to ask me about and everything like that?
Yeah, I think. How do you feel about Alvin Kamara?
For what period of time? Do you mean like for the rest of his career, for the next coming year?
The next coming year.
Next coming year, like how he's going to do, or just
is he going to be on the Saints? Is he going to be re-signed with New Orleans Saints?
Okay, so you're talking about after this season plays out, and then he comes that. Okay, I mean, I think it honestly kind of depends. I think next year is going to be an interesting year after the season because it's kind of a restart for you guys a little bit. Because Drew, we're all expecting him to retire. You're obviously going to still have Michael Thomas, and you have a young core of very good players. But you could be bringing a new QB. Probably will. I mean, if you sign Taysom Hill, then it's going to be Calvin Kamara because y'all ain't going to pay him nothing. It's crazy. So, but I mean, even in general, it depends on Alvin Kamara's season. Again, like you said, it depends if we play the season out. If he plays like he did last year, which some people felt like he didn't have the same year that we're used to having, then there may be some hesitation to give him money or top 5 money potentially. I mean, I think y'all could give him top 5 money, but we don't. We also know with so many players that y'all have to pay, because that's the only thing about having a lot of good players that are young is you have to pay these guys, and you got to decide who are you willing to let walk and who you're trying to keep. So, and running back, obviously, we've known has been devalued. But Alvin Kamara does do a lot for you guys in the passing game as well, so you can't always just say he's just strictly a running back. He's as big of a receiver as he is a running back in your offense. So it honestly depends on what the plan is with the offense next year. I think he'll stay. I don't think, to me, with your running back situation, I mean, your backup's Latavius Murray, right? So
yeah.
I mean, he's not going to be your long-term answer. And I don't think y'all want to start over in the running back position either. So I think y'all are probably going to retain him. I mean, it may be on maybe a short deal potentially. You never know, maybe 3 years or something. So, I don't think he's going to get like Christian McCaffrey money or anything like that. But he might ask for that. I mean, really, honestly, we have to see what Alvin Kamara feels like he deserves. I mean, Derrick Henry had probably the best, outside of Christian McCaffrey, the best season as a running back this year. And he didn't even get top 3 salary. He just got into the top 5. So, it just really depends on how he markets himself and what he wants. And depends on what the Saints want to do with their team, because they have to figure out, is he worth the money to keep? Or do we feel like are we just going to start over in our backfield with a new QB and maybe a new running back as well? But I think Alvin Kamara, I expect him to be on the Saints after this year as well. And I think they are going to be able to get a deal done.
I probably think we're just going to tag him.
Tag him?
I think we're able to tag on him and pay Marcus Lattimore, and we'll pay our safety as well. Needs to happen.
Yeah, you got a lot of defensive players to pay, really.
Not even that many. We just have that draft was so loaded as far as talent across the board for us that we kind of have no choice but to pony up where everybody else needs paid. So we'll get Marcus Lattimore done. Or I'm sorry, not Marcus. I don't know why I said that. Marshawn Lattimore. And we'll probably look elsewhere to spread some money around because I don't know if we're keeping Jameis or not. It depends on how the season goes and how they really feel about Jameis as a player. But if we don't keep Jameis, then it's very possible that we still pay him money. It just probably will be on a lesser deal.
Is Cam coming up? Is Cam Jordan coming up on anything?
No.
Or has he been? Or was he?
He's
paid
still
recently?
under contract.
Was he paid recently?
2 years ago.
2 years ago? Okay. I just didn't know if he was coming up for you guys. Because obviously, he's going to look for monster defensive end money. You see what Bosa's getting out here. So, but I feel it. All right. So I guess another guy I have for you is Aaron Rodgers.
It's crazy. I was going to ask you that. So I guess that's good. Do I think Aaron Rodgers is going to finish his career on Green Bay?
We ain't going to say his career. We're going to say the next 3 years.
The next 3 years?
Yeah. Well, do you think he'll be with Green Bay at the end of 3 years?
I think it all depends on how his body decides to deteriorate as he gets older, because we're seeing it with every quarterback. Eventually the first thing to go as a quarterback typically is arm strength, right? And it doesn't look like Aaron Rodgers has lost a bit of arm strength, but it is definitely apparent that his accuracy is not like where it used to be. He's definitely declining. It's not a super rapid decline. He's still one of the better quarterbacks in the league, but it's definitely not somewhere where you can sit here and say that, oh, Aaron Rodgers is fine. They didn't change the whole offense because they think Aaron Rodgers is still 26. Like, there's a reason why Aaron Jones is getting the ball this many times and why the rushing attack looks so good. Granted, Aaron Jones' touchdown numbers are ridiculous and he'll never do that again. But that offense is designed so that Aaron Rodgers doesn't have to do everything on his own anymore. Granted, they don't have a lot of receiver threats in the first place. So it feels very 2018 New Orleans Saints to me, how they're going to handle Aaron Rodgers rest of his career. But in 3 years, he could leave. I can't put it past him. Once Tom Brady left, everything was off the table, right? Mm-hmm. You can't expect anything anymore. Like, after Brett Favre, now Tom Brady, Phillip Rivers, everybody's moving around. Cam is no longer a Carolina Panther. There's a lot of movement within the quarterback position that I don't think a lot of people saw coming. I just thought you would just leave or retire. Or a lot of owners just thought they would just rather retire than go start somewhere new. But a lot of people are still chasing rings and chasing, that glory, that last minute, that last bit of what they have left as a player. And I feel like Aaron Rodgers isn't the type of guy who would just hang it up, especially if he feels like he has stuff left in the tank.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I know you said you're going to ask me that question, so I guess I'll go ahead and give a quick answer too. I think it honestly, I guess it depends on how ready they think Jordan Love is too, since they drafted him to be the future. It depends if they think he's ready to go. Obviously, we know the first 2 years, this year, next season, they can't really trade him because of his contract. But that third year, they're going to have some leeway. So that's the year everybody was kind of thinking, like, is that the year they might move him or they might let him go? So I think that depending on the next 2 years will depend if he stays. Like, if Green Bay ends up not playing well and having bad seasons, then I think he'll be out of there just because, and then they could use the excuse of performance and team performance. But if Green Bay is successful and they're making playoffs and they're, making a run, I think it's going to be hard to sit there and say, yeah, okay, we're going to move off of you. Because it is kind of similar to the Green Bay thing. Because I think the last year in Green Bay, didn't the Packers make the playoffs that year? The last Brett Favre year before they moved on to Rodgers. And that's why also it kind of looked kind of weird how you would move off of a guy. Now, obviously, Brett retired. And then he came back. And then they were just like, well, we already made the decision to move on. But, you never know. That type of stuff could happen. So you really just can't sometimes, I guess, tell. You never
really know. I think Brett Favre left, a little prematurely. Like, it wasn't like he was done and he left. It was like he had maybe a few more years left in the tank and then he was done. Of course, we know he went to Minnesota. He had one really, really good year, and then, of course, the next year it went bad, and then he retired. Then he came back again and was a Jet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that
everybody remembers that Jet year.
Yeah, the Jet year was real bad. And then that was it. No more Brett Favre anymore. So I don't think Aaron Rodgers would make similar mistakes, even though this situation is very similar to one that he faced himself. I don't think he would pull the same stuff, per se. I think he would just leave and basically say that he's not retiring and go chase a ring somewhere and be, I don't know, like a mercenary for the rest of the league. Find somewhere else to go play. Like, could you imagine a quarterback just deciding to say, you know what, I'm just going to keep signing 1-year deals to different teams and try to win? That would be kind of crazy. Now, Aaron Rodgers is a football savant, so I wouldn't put it past him to be able to do that, but it is difficult to get adjusted to a scheme or a passing scheme and just be able to up and leave year after year. But that would be fun to see for sure. I think I would enjoy watching that. But we're going to take our second break and we're going to come back talking more football here at the GSMC Football Podcast. We'll be right back.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA, from the UFC to extreme cage fighting. They got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. We're back here and looking at Las Vegas. We're looking not only to gamble with our picks, but also because we're talking about the Las Vegas Raiders, the newly located Las Vegas Raiders. Their quarterback has a lot to prove, and he is up for the challenge, Brice. What has our good man David Carr come and talk about?
I mean, basically, he just came out and he said he's tired of everybody thinking that he's not that good, that people are saying that he's not all that, and he thinks that he's underrated as a player. I mean, we forget about 3 years ago, I believe, Oakland was a number 2 seed in the AFC, and then he got hurt at the end of the year, and he was on candidate pace to be MVP. And I think people forget about that season that he had. And ever since then, he's never played to that or been at that same level, because Oakland's also never had, or Las Vegas now, has never had that same level of success. And so people are wondering, is he really that good? Obviously, we know that ever since Gruden's been there, they've said that he hasn't necessarily been 100% sold on Derek Carr, which is why there's always been rumblings that if there's a quarterback he could maybe get that was better, he would pull the trigger. And obviously, they signed Marcus Mariota this offseason to create competition, but also people look at it as Derek Carr's on a short lease. And so if he messes up, they're not going to hesitate to switch. So it'll be interesting to kind of see what happens with that. I think in general, when you look at this Raiders team, they're not a bad team. They have Josh Jacobs, the runner-up of Rookie of the Year offensively. So they have one of the best offensive lines in all of football. People forget that. Oakland has one of the best offensive lines in football. And they have an up-and-coming receiving core, and they just drafted Henry Ruggs. So, to me, offensively, Oakland is a team that I think people don't talk about as one of the top offenses in the game, but I think they have the potential to be with the talent that they have. But obviously, we know it's going to all depend on Derek Carr and how he plays this season. Because if he can be back to MVP Derek Carr, and then Las Vegas makes some noise, and then they're able to maybe make a playoff run, obviously, I think that will solidify him. And I think, John Gruden or whoever else has been doubting him has to just accept that, listen, even if he's not ever going to be that Patrick Mahomes, maybe even Lamar Jackson level of guy, he is still a guy who can win you games and compete and go toe-to-toe with those guys and not back down. I think that's important. And the thing about it, like I said, the way their team is constructed, it's not even built to be all on the quarterback because, like they said, they have a very good supporting cast around. They could be one of the best rushing attacks in the league. And all Derek Carr has to do is just make sure, on play action and everything, he's able to make plays. I mean, they have, I think Darren Waller was his name, the tight end that they have. I mean, nobody knew who he was before last year, and then he became a hit in fantasy. And then second, he emerged as one of the better tight ends in the league. And like I said, they have a lot of talent on offense. And then their problem last year overall was defense. Their secondary was not that good. Their secondary was kind of bad. So, if they fix defensively, and like I said, if Derek Carr plays well offensively, I think that he'll be able to get people to not see him the way they've seen him. Because like I say, it happens all the time. Matt Ryan had his MVP year. Before that, people were thinking Matt Ryan was washed. He was done. He's overrated. And, people still to this day are not sold on Matt Ryan. But, he's established himself. You can win games with him. You can make the playoffs with him. You can, if you have the right team, right system around him, you can make the Super Bowl with him. And honestly, that's what you need. I think, like I said, people are they want to get the next Patrick Mahomes and the next Lamar Jackson so badly that if you ain't playing that good, then people are going to think you're not that good. And it's just I don't think you can do that. So I think it's going to be a crucial year for him, clearly. If he doesn't play well and Marcus Mariota comes in there and he plays well, then obviously that could spell the end of Derek Carr in Las Vegas. But if he's able to consistently play well and they're able to win games and everything, I think he'll be good to go moving forward, in my opinion. Ethan, so, how are you feeling about Derek Carr coming into the season and just how you view him as a quarterback overall?
Coming into the season, you never know what somebody is able and capable of doing. So I'm not going to sit here and say that he can't improve, but I will say this. Ever since that year and afterwards, we haven't seen any glimpse of that really at all consistently. So I think he's shown us what he really is currently as a player and what he probably is going to continue to be, which is a very much an up and down quarterback who sometimes has bad decision-making capabilities on the offensive side, and honestly, kind of a guy who just tries to take stuff on the chin from a media standpoint and try to hold it together. But clearly, you can see it. A lot of Raiders fans don't like Derek Carr. A lot of media people don't like Derek Carr. And I don't think it's because he's a bad guy. I just think that He is not a guy that looks like he leads his team. It doesn't look like he has the locker room support. His coach is flip-flopping on him all the time. It just seems like a bad environment for Derek Carr. I wouldn't be surprised if he's gone somewhere else. And maybe that's what he needs, right? Maybe he's the next Bears quarterback. Who knows, right? We don't know. We've already seen one go to the Bears. We might see another one as far as somebody from the Raiders. But all in all, I can't make any judgments really about where he may end up. But I do know this. The Raiders have a lot of talent offensively, and a lot of their issues did not revolve around the offense last year, like you said. They could keep up in games, and there's a lot of games that they should have won. That game against Green Bay last year, they should have won. I don't know how they blew that game. But, you know, they were a hop, skip, and a jump away from making the playoffs last year. And he was a part of that, and he's also a part of why they didn't, because there's a lot of inconsistencies, and they are still pretty much a younger team in the NFL trying to figure out how to make all this thing work. And young teams in the NFL they're hard to finish games that really matter, right? Sometimes they'll get hot, but other times things will get really, really cold, and there'll be different walls that different rookies hit at different times. But, you know, it's different, right? In the NBA, the rookie wall and like playing a bunch of rookies is really, really, really hard on them, because they have to be able to maintain an offensive pace, have chemistry, be able to fight through adversity, and not turn the ball over 20,000 times, right? Mm-hmm. In the NFL, a rookie on offense or defense, they just have to do their job, essentially. And if they do their job, like football really, as much as it's a team game, it's very individual on performance at certain levels, right? A corner has to lock up his man. There's communication on defense, of course, but a corner's job is to maintain either his zone or stay on his man, as just as much as a quarterback's job is to distribute the ball and read the defense, make the right read, and do your job. You expect your wide receiver to be where he's supposed to be. Everything is about trust, because it's so individual in how to do your job. You can't do somebody else's job on the football field. It's impossible. So just as much as the quarterback has to trust that his wide receiver will be there, he also has to trust that his running back will make the clutch block off the edge, so that way he doesn't get slammed on the blind side, right? It's all about trust, and young teams have a lot of issues when it comes to trusting their teammates around them all the time, because they're trying to develop their own skills around each other, and it takes time to build up a certain level of chemistry. All that being said, I think Oakland has as good of a chance to come out of that division as anybody else, besides maybe Kansas City, because
so for second place.
Yeah, you know, but Oakland may surprise some people. Might be a wild card team.
Do you see Mariota potentially taking over and being the guy? Or?
No, not really. I wouldn't expect it. I wouldn't put any money on it. Unless Derek Carr decides to tap out, you know, if he gets hurt, or he wants to opt out the season, mid-season, or just say he doesn't want to play anymore, whatever the case may be. I just think whatever Derek Carr gives you is going to be much better than what Marcus Mariota gives you. And I could eat my own words. Marcus Mariota may somehow become the GOAT tomorrow, but I don't think he will become the GOAT tomorrow or any other day. So Marcus Mariota will not probably play a lot of downs as the Oakland Raider. He ain't going to
have his Tannehill moment, huh?
No. Not there, I don't think.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, I guess it really just depends on what happens with the team. I mean, I think every team kind of sometimes has the situation. Obviously, you know, Derek Carr is not the only quarterback on the hot seat. Baker's on the hot seat as well. Since, you know, again, it's kind of the same situation, you know, bunch of offensive talent. Honestly, in terms of groups of talent, should be, you know, one of the best offenses in the game. But if they're not, I mean, you kind of would think, oh, that's on Baker. And
is Baker really on a hot seat? Are we sure?
I mean, you know how it is with new, like, regimes and staff, we didn't draft you. So if you don't play well, we have no obligation to feel like, oh, but we drafted you. We invested in you. We need to try. It's like, well, if you fail, I mean, we can just go. If we were bad, we can just, if we got enough ammo, we got enough players. I mean, we can trade up and get Trevor Lawrence if we need to. So, you know, it's going to be kind of on Baker to prove it. I mean, cause this is his third year now in the league. So, and this is his second full year starting, even though he's played like half his first year. So if he gives you another year of kind of struggles like he did last year, I can see why they feel like, okay, yeah, we need to move off of him, because it's one of those situations where you've given him so much talent. If you can't do anything with the talent we give you, then that kind of tells us what you are. It's one thing if you gave him limited talent and then he's doing the best he can, and it's like, It's one thing if we gave you 2 top running backs, 2 top receivers, 2 tight ends, a better offensive line, and then you still can't.
I mean, their offensive line is still pretty bad.
I mean, listen, they got their tackle position solved, and I think that was their biggest thing. So we got to see how. I think they signed Jack Conklin, I believe, to 1, and then they drafted a guy. So obviously they're expecting an improvement. Now they don't have to be elite or anything, but if they could be better than what they were last year, where he's not running for his life, then I think that's still an upgrade, and that could put them in position to be successful. Because they could run like last year. So, I mean, they're going to have to rely on that a lot, but, you know, that's going to be the biggest thing, you know, I think, in terms of, like, if what happens with Baker and in Cleveland, you know, because I just, it's like, think about, like, you know, Chicago and Mitchell Trubisky. Like, I mean, Chicago's never been known as a great offensive team, but, like, you know, you've seen Trubisky start for two years now. And now he's going into his 3rd year, and then he's in a position battle with Nick Foles. A lot of people think he's going to lose. But there's a reason why people are already like sold him, because even with a limited amount of talent, you can kind of just tell. He's just like, I don't know. Like Baker is like, okay.
But we know Baker can throw the football. We don't know if Mitchell Trubisky can really throw the football. Like, Mitchell Trubisky, when the first read is not there, it literally is horrible. Like, it is like... At least Baker, we know that there's quarterback talent within him. Mm-hmm. What I'm saying is, as we almost wrap up the segment, is that not Mitchell Trubisky, but Baker Mayfield is a guy who came in with a coach that was not really about him to begin with. He didn't like the head coach. Head coach didn't like him. Then we get Freddie Kitchens. Freddie Kitchens was not a good year for anybody, really. Odell didn't like Freddie Kitchens. Jarvis, nobody really appreciated Freddie Kitchens, probably besides Nick Chubb. And even then, Nick Chubb didn't get the ball nearly as much in the Freddie Kitchens offense as he should have. And now we're moving to a new regime, like you said. But I feel like this is a clean slate for Baker Mayfield rather than he's on his last of days, because we don't know what he could be in this offense. And I think he needs at least a year before we reevaluate again. But I think it's too early to give up on him or start clicking the time clock. I mean, we went through 3 or 4 coaches with Jameis before everybody decided to, and Jameis had his best year as a starter, and he got let go.
It's hard to describe that year. Like, is it his best year? I mean, if you're talking about positive stats, yeah. I mean,
listen, that's the best of Jameis we're ever going to get. But we're going to take another break and finish out the podcast coming up. So this is the GSMC. We'll be right back.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Okay, and we're back here at the GSMC Football Podcast. Me and Brice here chatting it up. We're about to get into some top 10 receiver cores for the NFL. Brice has a list of different receiver cores, and he's just going to start listing them off, and we're going to talk about them. So go ahead, hit us with number 10.
Number 10 on this list, this is off theringer.com, by the way. Obviously, we know that top offenses list they brought. This is just they said this is an unbiased list of top receiving cores in the league. At number 10, they have the Arizona Cardinals. So, obviously, we know they have DeAndre Hopkins. Christian Kirk's one of the better slot receivers. Larry Fitzgerald, he's been there forever. You know, Mr. Old Reliable. Andy Isabella is a guy that maybe a lot of people haven't heard of, but had made some plays last year in that offense. Kenyon Drake, obviously, at running back, and then Max Williams as tight end. I mean, just off that ranking alone, Ethan, do you think that's a good ranking, too high, too low, just off that alone? Do you think maybe they could be higher on the list to you, or what are you seeing? Because the Arizona is like 10.
Honestly, this is a pretty, I think they could go high. They could go higher probably depending on who's on this list. But Arizona has DeAndre Hopkins. That's going to put you in the upper echelon of receiver cores across the NFL, no matter what you say. So that alone just boosts you up to the top third of the league. And then after that, everything is kind of like icing on the cake. Christian Kirk is a good piece. They have Larry Fitzgerald, still one of the most secure hands in the league, old reliable, the Tim Duncan of the NFL, all hands, all game. I think they belong there. It makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. I think this receiving core could be a top 5 receiving core in the league in terms of statistically, because they have big play. They have big play receivers. They have guys who can move the chains, and I think that's the type of offense you want, where you can beat you in any dynamic. Okay, they're not going to give us the deep ball. All right, we can beat you over the middle with Christian Kirk, Larry, or even Henry Drake out of the backfield. But we can also make big plays over the top with DeAndre, and you know it's really a pick your poison with their offense. So, well, I mean, obviously, Arizona, obviously they're just going to be dictated off Kyler Murray and how he progresses in his second year, but we'll have to see how he does. At number 9 on this list, they have the Buffalo Bills with, obviously, they traded for Stephon Diggs this past offseason, got him official number 1 receiver, John Brown, obviously, Cole Beasley, Devin Singletary, and Dawson Knox. So, Ethan, how do you think number 9's good? Would you put Arizona over that, switch spots? So, how you feel about Buffalo's receiving core?
Buffalo's receiving core they were underrated last year. Adding Stephon Diggs made them a legitimate threat in the AFC East. And I think that they will probably have the best wide receiver core out of the AFC East. Probably.
Okay.
All depending on health and stuff. Because the Patriots wide receiver core is a question mark. Miami's receiver core is a question mark because Preston Williams was the guy beforehand, before he got hurt. And then the emergence and resurgence of their other receiver, I can't remember his name.
Devontae Parker?
Yeah, the guy who sucks. We don't talk about him. I'm kidding. That's the Michael Thomas in me. But anyway, he's not they're not the greatest group of pairing on the world. They're still very unproven young players. Stephon Diggs is pretty proven, and John Brown is really good, even though he's short. But you didn't want John Brown to be your number 1.
He's not your number 2, though.
Yeah, he's not your number 1 anymore, so that helps. Now their tight end core can have some work done, and there's a lot to be left said there. But as far as overall receiving core, I don't have a problem with them being 9.
Yeah, I feel the same. I think the main thing at the end of the day is just going to be Josh Allen. That's the main thing. If he can prove his accuracy and get the ball to these guys and make big plays and make this offense more explosive, Buffalo will definitely be a team to be reckoned with this coming season. At number 8 on the list, they have the Los Angeles Chargers receiving core. Obviously, we know it consists of Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Joe Reed, and KJ Hill also at receiver, Austin Eckler at the backfield, and Hunter Henry at tight end. So what do you think about the Chargers at number 8?
Still no problems here. This list makes a lot more sense here. Hunter Henry is a really good tight end when he's healthy. Of course, Austin Eckler was the second best receiving. Actually, statistically, he was the best receiving running back we've ever seen. I believe. Don't check me on that. But he was doing some stuff mid-season that was quite shocking. Like, I don't think he'll ever have a season receiving the ball like that ever again as a running back. And that adds a lot of value to you on your team. Not to mention having Keenan Allen, one of the premier route runners, one of the top 10 wide receivers in the league. Of course, they're going to be top 10. And, of course, Terrell Williams is not no scrub either. So,
yeah, definitely. I think that's one thing about the offense. Whoever starts, Tyrod Taylor or Justin Herbert, they're going to have weapons. They're going to have talent, and they just got to make the most out of the talent they have on the team for them to be successful and move forward with the plans that they probably have for their season and the team and the talent that they have. At number 7, the Los Angeles Rams. Obviously, we know Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, Josh Reynolds, and Van Jefferson at wide receiver, Tyler Higbee at tight end, and Gerald Everett also at tight end. So, what do you think about this? I think this may be one that we may be a little on because, obviously we know they traded away Brandon Cooks this offseason. So
I'm not that about it. I think they might be placed in it might be weird to think about because of how the Rams looked last year, but their wide receiver group is really solid. And even with losing Brandon Cooks, they still have a lot of room to grow as a unit. And they will go only as far as Jared Goff takes them. So I don't think that their wide receiver ranking is a reflection on how they played last year, but it's just what they can be if Jared Goff can be good.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that could be looked at like that. And I think also, Goff loves his tight ends. So obviously Jared Everett and Tyler Higbee were big parts of the offense last year, which is why they didn't list a running back here. Obviously also because Doug Gurley isn't there anymore, so they don't know what the running back position is going to look like. But they have guys that I think they trust. And obviously, Sean McVay is going to try to get him always in the best position to be successful. At number 6, the Philadelphia Eagles. Obviously, Deshaun Jackson coming back. Alshon Jeffrey still on the team. If he can stay healthy, we know what he can do. Jalen Reagor, the first-round rookie they drafted. The speedster out of TCU. Miles Sanders, obviously, coming out of the backfield. And obviously, we know about their 2 great tight ends in Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. Honestly, I have no problem with this. I could even see them maybe even being a spot or 2 higher. How about you, Ethan?
Health is wealth. If they can be healthy, no issues. If they can't maintain health, of course, things will go bad again. But Carson Wentz should have no problem utilizing this receiving core to the best of his abilities if everybody can stay on the field, including himself. So, yeah, the Eagles are prime position to have another year where it looks like they might be one of the better teams coming out of the NFC. And I think a lot of people are kind of sleep on them as far as what they are probably able to do in the incoming season.
Yeah, and I think also, like I said, if they stay healthy, I mean, if Deshaun Jackson can be the deep threat that they expected him to be, Alshon Jeffrey's that guy who can he's like that basketball player who goes up and gets rebounds. He can get the jump catch. Jalen Reagor is the speedster, makes big plays. We've seen what Miles Sanders, Zach Ertz, and Dallas Goedert could do. They're all great pieces. I mean, this offense seems like this could be really one of the better offenses in all of the league. At number 5, the New Orleans Saints. Obviously, Michael Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, Tyquan Smith, Alvin Kamara, Gerald Cook, and then they have running back, wide receiver, quarterback, tight end, whatchamacallit, Taysom Hill. So, how do you feel about that ranking for your team?
It's too low, and people will regret it when they realize that Michael Thomas should put you in the top 3 already, just by yourself. Look at the offensive numbers. Look at how the fact that Alvin Kamara had a bad season last year to him as far as touchdown ratio, but he was not himself because he was hurt. Something was wrong with his leg. He already admitted it, and it was very much apparent that he was not the same guy after week 5. A healthy Alvin Kamara, a Michael Thomas that is still the best wide receiver in the league, a Jared Cook who, after Drew Brees came back, looked like a really, really good tight end for them and made some moves. Adding Emmanuel Sanders, right? I still have hopes that Tyquan Smith can figure it out. And then you have Taysom Hill, who probably won't be utilized as much as we think, but he's still a weapon. Honestly, they belong in the top 3, in my opinion. I don't care.
Hey.
They'll get there.
I mean, I think, you make some good points. I mean, your offense is one of the best in the league. I think some people may even look at the fact that the fact that Drew Brees doesn't have that cannon arm, and they feel like the offense could be more explosive potentially. But I mean, overall, this is like more. If you put this on a lot of different teams, this would be with different quarterbacks. I mean, this offense would be a top 5 offense any year. Especially, I also look at Taysom Hill being such a big wild card because you really don't know how to defend him. So I think also that makes your offense just that much more unpredictable. And I think that gives y'all an advantage against a lot of teams. But you want to see who's above you now. So number 4, the Cleveland Browns. Obviously, Odell Jarvis, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, Austin Hooper, and David Njoku. So what do you think about them saying, hey, we think Cleveland is a spot above?
2 years of fancy new toys, but no worth yet. That's it. They can be ranked ahead of us for now. Because they have a new fancy toy in Austin Hooper, and Kareem Hunt will have a full season to play under. But don't be fooled. They still have to prove it on the field. The Saints have been proven time and time again offensively. We don't know anything about Cleveland besides the fact that it's Cleveland.
I mean, hey, I guess you got a point there. I mean, I guess on paper, it looks like a top 5 offense. We have to see how it is on the field, actually. At number 3, the Dallas Cowboys. Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, Devin Smith, Ezekiel Elliott, and Blake Jarwin. How do we feeling about Dallas Cowboys in the top 3?
I can see why they're there. There's a lot of talent across the board, and they've had one of the more talented rosters in the NFC period for the past few years, and then adding CeeDee Lamb was just like dicing on the cake. So it is what it is. I think that they're in this sort of rankings where everybody else is at. It makes sense. I wouldn't know where else you would put them, to be honest, because the talent is there all across the board. Yeah,
I mean, listen, Amari Cooper, regardless of what you think, Amari Cooper has proven he can be one of the top receivers in the game. Michael Gallup has really broke out and became a very reliable number 2. CeeDee Lamb can now become that number 2. We all know what he did at Oklahoma and the big plays he made there. Zeke, we know if Zeke has a full, I mean, you can't really say any player had a full offseason this summer, but, if he gets himself back into shape and back where he could be, we know what he can be. And then Blake Jarwin was honestly Dak's favorite target at tight end last year, not Jason Witten. So the chemistry is definitely there between the two. So now we're getting our top 2. At number 2, Tampa Bay Buccaneers are the number 2 team. Obviously, we know Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, some people consider 2 number 1 receivers potentially. Scott Miller, a guy that a lot of people haven't heard about, but really good sneaky slot for them. Ronald Jones, the second. Rob Gronkowski, who they added, who came out of retirement. And O.J. Howard. And obviously, we know about the big addition to this offense, Tom Brady. So do you think Tampa Bay is worthy of being the number 2, and do you think they'll actually go out this season and prove why they are ranked number 2?
I think that they're overhyped, just like how Cleveland was. And of course they're going to have to prove it. We have to know if Gronk can play in the NFL still at a high level. And we have to know that he can stay on the field too. Like if he plays good, that's great. But we all know Gronk has injury history. And if he can't stay on the field, that means nothing. But of course they have 2 top 10, arguably top 5 receivers, at least one top 5 receiver for sure, and another top 10 wide receiver on their same team. So, yeah, you kind of have to be up there.
Yeah, I mean, the potential is there. I feel like this is more of a potential selection, potentially, because the potential for them to be top 2 is there. And I think also we're looking at what Jameis did, because that offense was explosive with Jameis. I mean, he did put up 30-plus touchdowns. So, in big numbers. So, clearly, Jameis, he made some things happen. And we're thinking Brady's better than Jameis, so wouldn't the offense have to be, if not the best, maybe even better potentially? So, it really just kind of depends on how you view it. And I guess at number 1, I think this one's not going to be surprising to anybody. The Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, we know with Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins, McCall Hardman, Demarcus Robinson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and Travis Kelce. I think this is a solidified, mutually agreed number 1 offense in the league. How about you, Ethan?
Well, I mean, what do you want me to say? That was predictable. Yeah, they deserve to be number 1. There's no other offense in the league that can touch the amount of, like, no one has as much space to throw the ball as Patrick Mahomes does, because they have the most dangerous weapon in football on the same team, along with the best quarterback on the same team. It's a no-brainer. They're the most dangerous offense in the league by far.
Yeah, man, and I just think we have no reason to think that it's going to change this year. But if you're also wondering about some other teams, my Atlanta Falcons were ranked 11th, just right outside the top 10. So we were just about to crack it, but, you know, it happens. They actually have, and I don't know if this is surprising some people, the Giants at 12. So, I mean, they have some guys. The Giants do have some nice talent. If you're wondering who's last on this list, it's the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're at 32 on this list. Maybe surprising people, maybe not. I would think maybe Washington's was maybe worse, but...
No, Washington has some good guys out there that can catch.
I mean, yeah, I guess you could say that. Obviously, New England's 29th, if you're wondering about New England. Obviously, we know about their core. It's funny we were talking about Las Vegas having a lot of talent. They're actually ranked 28th on this list. So it looks like they're not seeing it. But I guess they don't have that definitive number one receiver, so I guess maybe that's why that's the case, and et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, so I mean, it sounds like we both for the most part, think the list was pretty accurate, you could say maybe?
They had some corrections they could have made, personally, in my opinion, but that sounds like more of my problem than theirs. It is what it is. A list is very personalized, and they're probably not meant to be agreed with all the time. So what that says, the GSMC football podcast for today. Thank you all for listening and checking us out. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. And don't forget to follow us on our social media, Facebook and Twitter at GSMC Football. We'll see you all next week. Keep it real and try to stay positive.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.